Billionaire father-in-law abandoned his infertile wife. 5 years later, he saw her with twins. He had worn ivory, not white. Not because she knew better, but because she didn't want to lie. She didn't want to pretend she was the bride they wanted. "Clara," Elias said, voice low, smooth as polished marble. "Tell me again. How many times have you been tested?" She didn't look up. "3 times, Mr. Whitmore. 3. He repeated it like a verdict. "And not one positive." Pause. The clink of a fork against porcelain. A guest coughed politely. Daniel shifted. "Father, she's only been trying for 5 years. It's not what?" Elias cut him off, eyes never leaving Clara. "It's not acceptable?" "No, Daniel. It's not possible. And you know why." He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a whisper that still echoed through the room like a bell tolling death. "Because I didn't marry you to a woman. I married you to an heir." Clara's breath hitched. Just once. Barely audible. But Elias heard it. He always heard everything. She lifted her eyes then, slowly, painfully, and met his. Not with anger, not with tears, with something worse, acceptance. "I know," she said, voice quiet, clear as a mountain stream. "I know you didn't marry me because you loved me, or because you liked me, or because you thought I'd make you happy." A beat. "I know you married me because I had the right face, the right bloodline, the right fertility." Daniel's face turned pale. He opened his mouth, but Elias raised a hand. "Don't," he said, not to Clara, to his son. "You don't get to speak for her. You never have." Then, to Clara, "You were chosen because your mother was a doctor, your grandmother, a nurse. Your lineage is clean. No deformities, no weakness, no defects." Clara swallowed. Her throat moved like a bird trapped in glass. "And yet," she whispered, "I've taken every pill, every injection, every test. I've sat in cold rooms while strangers stuck needles in me. I've cried into pillows so you wouldn't hear me. I've prayed to gods I don't believe in, just to give you what you wanted." She paused. A single tear slipped free. It didn't fall. It hung, glistening, defiant on her cheek. "I'm not broken," she said, voice trembling now, but steady. "I'm not a machine that failed. I'm a woman who loved your son, who tried to be the wife you demanded, who believed, just for a moment, that love could be enough." Elias didn't blink. "Love doesn't build empires," he said. "Blood does." She nodded, slowly, as if she'd known this answer all along. Then she stood. The room froze. No one moved. No one breathed. Clara placed her napkin gently on the table, perfectly aligned, like she'd been taught. "I won't be your disappointment anymore," she said. "I won't be the silent wife who fades into the wallpaper of your legacy." She turned to Daniel. He looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "Daniel," she whispered, "I loved you, not because you were rich, not because you were his son, but because you smiled when you thought no one was watching, because you held my hand when I cried after another negative result, because you told me once, 'You're the only thing that makes this house feel like home.'" Her voice cracked. "I believed you." She turned back to Elias. "You didn't want a daughter-in-law?" she said, voice suddenly calm, like the eye of a hurricane. "You wanted a vessel, and I let you use me." She stepped back. "I'm done being your empty vessel." And then she walked out. No slam, no scream, no dramatic exit, just silence. The chandelier trembled again. One crystal fell. It hit the marble floor with a sound like a heartbeat stopping. No one moved. No one spoke. Daniel sat there, trembling, staring at the space where she'd been. Elias didn't look at him. He looked at the empty chair. And for the first time in his life, he felt something. Not pride, not control, not power, just a hollow, a cavern inside his chest where something had been ripped out, and he didn't even know what it was. Outside, the night was cold. Clara stood beneath the porte-cochere, her coat too thin, her suitcase small. Taxi waited. She didn't look back. Behind her, through the glass doors, she could see Daniel rise. He ran. He reached the door. He threw it open. Clara! She didn't turn. I love you! He screamed, voice breaking like glass. She closed her eyes. I know, she whispered, and walked into the dark. The taxi door closed. The engine turned over. The taillights vanished into the city's mist. Inside, Elias Whitmore stood alone in the ballroom. The chandelier still glowed. The candles still burned. The wine still sat untouched. And on the table, where Clara had placed her napkin, a single pearl button had fallen. He picked it up, held it in his palm. Cold, small, alive. He didn't cry, not then. But in the silence that followed, he finally understood. He hadn't lost a wife. He'd lost the only person who had ever loved him, without asking for anything in return. And he'd never even noticed she was gone. 5 years later, Elias would see her again, with twins. And he would know some love doesn't need blood to be real. Some love doesn't need to be born. It just needs to be chosen. Certo, agora tu como narrador e storyteller desenvolva a historia sem marcacos com o nome de cada tópico que for desenvolve. Mi conti sobrio tópico tu com dialogo como su fosso espectador. Sempre lembrando de desenvolver com vida moco. Com os sentimentos de forma que a estrutura de narrativa utiliza uma linha temporal linear de modo o espectador sentir o que o personagem está sentindo amigos. Com 6.000 characters Quin 3. Next. 80b. A3b. The silence didn't end when Clara left the ballroom. It just changed. It became heavier, thicker, like velvet soaked in salt water. For 5 years, the Whitmore mansion never stopped shining. Gold-plated railings, marble floors polished to mirror the sky, servants who moved, like ghosts, never speaking unless spoken to. But inside, the house grew colder. Not with winter, with absence. Clara's room remained untouched. Her perfume still lingered in the drawer. Something light, like jasmine and rain. Daniel used to sneak in at night just to breathe it. He'd press his face into her pillow and whisper her name like a prayer. He never told anyone, not even his father. Elias never entered the room. He couldn't, because every time he passed the door, he saw her. Not as she was, but as she could have been. It was winter when the first test results came back. Daniel had taken her to the clinic in Zurich, the same one where his mother had conceived him, the same one where doctors had smiled and said, "You're lucky. You have the genes of a queen." Clara sat in the chair, hands folded in her lap, wearing the same blue dress she'd worn to her wedding, because she believed if she dressed like the woman they wanted, maybe she'd become her. The doctor, a kind-eyed woman with silver hair, held the report gently. "Clara," she said, voice soft as a lullaby, "the tests are conclusive. You have a rare condition, bilateral tubal agenesis. Your fallopian tubes, they never developed." Clara didn't react. She just nodded. "Meaning?" Daniel asked, voice tight. "It means," the doctor said, "you were never meant to carry a child. Not biologically. Not ever." Silence. Daniel looked at Clara. Her face was blank. Not numb. Not broken. Just empty. Like a room after the last guest has left. "I knew," she whispered. Daniel blinked. "What?" "I knew," she repeated louder this time. "I knew before I married you. I knew before I said yes. My mother told me when I was 15. She said, 'Don't dream of babies, Clara. You'll only break your heart.' I didn't tell you because I thought, if I loved you enough, maybe love could fix it." Daniel's hands shook. "You didn't tell me? Because you thought I'd leave you?" She looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time he saw the weight behind her eyes. Not sadness, grief, the kind that doesn't cry. It just stays. "I didn't tell you," she said, "because I didn't want you to choose me because you pitied me. I wanted you to choose me because you loved me." He reached for her hand. She pulled away. "I don't want your pity, Daniel. I want your love." He didn't answer because he didn't know how to give it. The next morning, Elias received the report. He read it in his study alone. He didn't call Daniel. He didn't summon Clara. He just sat there, staring at the words. Patient demonstrates no anatomical capacity for natural conception. No known cure. Adoption or surrogacy recommended. He laughed. Not a joyful laugh. A hollow, brittle thing, like ice cracking underfoot. He picked up the phone. Called his personal physician. Get me the best fertility specialist in Europe. And find me a surrogate. Someone with the right bloodline. No defects. No history. No emotional baggage. He hung up. Then he walked to Clara's room. Opened the door. Didn't go in. Just stood in the threshold. Looked at her vanity. Her brush. Her favorite book, The Little Prince, open on the nightstand. He picked it up. Turned to the page she'd marked. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. He closed the book. Set it down. Left. That night, he told Daniel. Clara can't have children. Daniel didn't scream. Didn't cry. Just sat there, staring at his father like he'd never seen him before. And Elias leaned forward. And you're going to have an heir. We're not a family that ends. We're a dynasty. And dynasties don't survive on feelings. They survive on legacy. Daniel stood. I'm not doing this, he said. You don't have a choice, Elias replied. I'm not marrying a surrogate. You're not marrying anyone, Elias said, voice cold as steel. You're producing an heir. And if Clara can't give you one, you'll find someone who can. Daniel turned to leave. Where are you going? To find her. You won't find her, Elias said. She's already gone. Daniel paused. Then he turned. His voice was quiet. But I haven't. Clara didn't run that night. She waited. For 3 weeks. She stayed in the house. Woke up early. Made coffee. Sat at the kitchen table. Watched the sunrise. She didn't pack. Didn't cry. Didn't speak. She just waited for Daniel to come. To say something real. To say, I love you, even if you can't give me a child. To say, I don't need a son. I need you. But he never came. Instead, Elias sent a lawyer with a check and a contract for your cooperation in the dissolution of your marriage. You will receive $5 million. You will not speak to the press. You will not contact Daniel. You will vanish. She read it, signed it, without hesitation. The lawyer asked, Do you have any questions? She looked at him and smiled. A small, quiet thing. I have one. What's that? She whispered. Will you tell my husband that I never stopped loving him? The lawyer looked away. I'll try. That night, Clara packed one suitcase, took only her mother's locket, her favorite sweater, and the little prince. She left the check on the kitchen table, beside the coffee cup she'd left out, still warm. She didn't lock the door. She didn't say goodbye. She just walked out. And the house, the grand, glittering, hollow house, didn't notice she was gone. Not until the next morning, when the maid found the coffee cup, and the check, and the book, opened to the same page, and the words beneath it, written in Clara's handwriting. What is essential is invisible to the eye. But I loved you anyway. And for the first time in his life, Elias Whitmore didn't feel powerful. He felt empty, like the house, like the silence, like the child he would never hold, because he hadn't lost a wife. He'd lost the only woman who had ever loved him, without asking for a child. And he'd never even noticed, until she was gone. 5 years later, he'd see her again. Elias didn't sleep that night. He sat in his study, the check still on the table, untouched, like a monument to betrayal or to mercy. He stared at the coffee cup, still warm. He touched it. His fingers trembled. He didn't call the police. He didn't send men to find her. He didn't even tell Daniel. He just waited, as if she might walk back in, as if she'd forgotten her keys, as if this were just another morning. 2 days later, Daniel came to him. He looked like a man who'd been buried alive. His eyes were red, his shirt wrinkled, his voice raw. She's gone. Elias didn't look up. I know. She didn't take anything, not even her wedding ring. She left it on the dresser. Daniel's breath caught. She wrote something. Elias finally looked at him. On the mirror? Daniel nodded. Elias stood, walked to the master bedroom. The mirror was still there, fogged slightly from the steam of yesterday's bath, and written in condensation. Faint, trembling, like a whisper carved by tears. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because you never saw me. Daniel stood behind him. I tried, he whispered. I tried to find her. I called every clinic, every hospital. I even went to her mother's house in Porto. She said Clara left a letter. For you. Elias turned. What did it say? Daniel pulled a folded piece of paper from his coat. It smelled like jasmine. He didn't open it. He handed it to Elias. Elias took it, held it like it might dissolve. He opened it. The handwriting was small, delicate, unsteady. Elias, you asked me to be a vessel. I tried. I gave you every drop of my hope, every tear, every sleepless night. I thought if I loved you enough, you'd learn to see me. But you only ever saw what I couldn't give. I am not broken. I am not a failure. I am a woman who loved your son with everything she had, and you chose your legacy over her heart. I don't hate you. I just don't want to be near you anymore. Don't look for me. I won't be found. And if you ever wonder what happened to the woman you married, know this. She didn't die. She just learned how to live. Asterisk. Clara. Elias didn't cry. He didn't move. He just held the letter until his fingers turned white. Then he crumpled it, slowly, like he was folding a piece of his own soul. He dropped it into the fireplace, watched it burn. The flame flickered. For a moment, he thought he saw her face in the smoke, smiling, not bitterly, not angrily, just free. 3 months passed. Daniel moved out, took a job in Lisbon. No one knew why. Elias stopped hosting dinners, stopped traveling, stopped speaking to his board. He began to walk, every morning, at dawn, through the city. He didn't go to the gym, didn't take meetings. He just walked, past the flower shop where Clara used to buy lilies, past the bakery where she'd wait in line for sourdough, past the park bench where she'd sit and read while Daniel worked. He'd stop, just stop, and stare, as if she might be there, waiting, not for him, for someone else, someone who knew how to love. One rainy afternoon, a letter arrived. No return address, no stamp, just his name written in ink, faint, smudged, as if written in haste. He opened it. It was a single sentence. She's alive, and she's not alone. Elias's hands shook. He turned the paper over. On the back, drawn in pencil, shaky but careful, 2 tiny figures, holding hands, with wings, a boy, a girl, and between them a heart, and beneath it, they have your eyes. Elias dropped the letter, stumbled back. His breath came in ragged gasps. They have your eyes. His eyes, the same sharp, gray-blue, the same way they narrowed when he was thinking, the same way they lit up just once when he saw his mother's portrait. He'd never told anyone, not even Daniel. He'd never told anyone that he'd been adopted, that his real parents died when he was 3, that the Whitmore name was bought, that he was never meant to be here, that he'd spent his life building empires not to leave a legacy, but to prove he was worth something, that he wasn't a mistake, that he wasn't invisible. And now, someone else had his eyes, and they were alive. And Clara, she'd known all along, and she'd never told him, because she didn't need his approval. She didn't need his money. She didn't need his name. She just needed to be free. That night, Elias stood in front of the mirror, looked at his own reflection, the man he'd become, cold, controlled, empty. He whispered, "Who are you?" No answer, just silence. Then a knock at the door, late, unannounced. He didn't move, didn't speak. The knock came again, louder, more insistent. He walked to the door. His hand hovered over the handle. He didn't turn the knob. He didn't ask who it was. He just waited. Outside, a child's voice, soft as snowfall. "Are you "Are you my grandfather?" Elias froze. He didn't breathe. The voice came again. "I know you don't know me. I know you don't want me. But I have your eyes. And I think you're sad." Silence. Then, a small, trembling hand slipped under the door. A drawing, drawn in crayon. 2 stick figures. One tall, one small, holding hands. Beneath them, a heart. And a word, written in shaky letters, "Please." Elias fell to his knees. Not in prayer, not in shame, in surrender. He pressed his forehead to the door and whispered, not to the child, not to the world, but to the ghost of the woman who'd loved him without asking for anything, "I'm sorry." Outside, the wind carried the scent of jasmine. And for the first time in 5 years, Elias Whitmore cried. Not because he'd lost, but because he'd finally been found. The next morning, he found the letter again, the one with the drawing. He held it to his chest and whispered, "I'll find you." He didn't know where, he didn't know how, but he knew this time he wouldn't wait. He'd go, he'd search, he'd beg, he'd kneel, he'd do anything to see her face, to hear her voice, to look into the eyes of the children and finally see himself, not as the man he pretended to be, but as the man she'd always seen, broken, lost, and still worthy of love. Somewhere in a quiet coastal town, a woman with tired eyes and a quiet smile watched the sunrise, held her twins close, and whispered, "I told you he'd come." One of the children looked up. "Will he love us?" Clara smiled. Her voice was soft. "He already does." She didn't know he'd found the drawing, didn't know he was coming, didn't know he'd crossed oceans, didn't know he'd sold his company, didn't know he'd left everything, just to find the one thing he never knew he'd lost. But the wind knew, and the sea remembered, and the stars, they were waiting for him to finally look up and see, not what he owned, but what he'd been given, and what he'd thrown away. He was coming, and this time she wouldn't run, because some love he didn't take a car, didn't hire a guide, didn't call ahead. He'd left his suitcases at the train station, wore the same coat he'd worn 5 years ago, the one Clara had mended with blue thread after the button fell off during their last dinner. He'd kept it, folded it, smelled it every night. The village was small, too small for a Whitmore, too quiet for a billionaire. Cobblestone streets, fishing nets drying on wooden racks, a church bell that rang only at dawn and dusk. He asked for directions, at the bakery, at the post office, at the little clinic with the peeling paint and the crooked sign. Clara Mendez, MD, free care for those who need it. The woman behind the counter didn't recognize him. She just handed him a cup of coffee. "Cold outside," she said. "You look like you've walked a long way." He nodded. "I'm looking for Clara." She didn't blink, didn't smile, didn't ask why, just pointed. "To the lighthouse." He didn't ask why there. He didn't ask who lived there. He just walked, past the salt-stained houses, past the children chasing seagulls, past the old man who whistled the same tune Clara used to hum while washing dishes. The lighthouse stood alone on the cliff, white, tall, lonely. Its light hadn't been turned on in years, but the windows, they were clean. And there, in the lower pane, a small wooden sign, hand-painted, in uneven letters, "No visitors after sunset." Elias stopped, his breath caught. He didn't knock, he didn't call. He just stood there, watching, waiting, for 5 minutes, then 10. The wind howled, the waves crashed, and then the door opened. A child, a girl, about 3, hair the color of burnt honey, eyes his eyes, one blue, one green, and in her hand a crayon drawing of a man, tall, with a coat, and a heart above his head. Below it, "Grandpa." Elias's knees nearly gave. He didn't speak, didn't move, didn't breathe. The girl tilted her head. "You're not the man from the picture." He swallowed. "I'm not." She shook her head. "No, the man in the picture. He's sad." A voice came from behind her, soft, familiar, like a song he'd forgotten he loved. "Luna, go inside." "Clara." She stood in the doorway, wearing a faded sweater, her hair shorter, her face thinner, her eyes still the same, still holding the whole ocean. She didn't smile, didn't cry, didn't run. She just looked at him, like she'd been waiting, not for him to come, but for him to see. Elias stepped forward. One step, then another. His voice cracked. "I didn't know." She didn't interrupt. He tried again. "I didn't know. You were still alive." Clara didn't answer. She looked past him, to the horizon, to the sea, then back to him. "I didn't know you'd come." He swallowed. "I didn't know I would either." Silence. The wind carried the scent of salt and lavender. Luna tugged at Clara's sleeve. "Is he the one who hurt you?" Clara didn't flinch. She didn't lie. She didn't defend. She just knelt, looked her daughter in the eyes. "Some people hurt others because they're afraid." She stood, looked at Elias. "Are you afraid now?" He didn't answer. He reached into his coat, pulled out the drawing, the one with the two stick figures, the heart, the word, "Please." He held it out. "I found this." Clara looked at it, then at him. "You kept it." "I kept everything." She stepped forward, just one step, close enough that he could smell her jasmine and sea salt, close enough that he could see the scar on her left wrist, the thin, pale line. He froze. She saw him look, didn't pull away. "From the pills," she said. "The ones they gave me to make me feel less. The ones I didn't take." He didn't speak. He couldn't. She looked past him again, to the house, to the window, to the shadow behind the curtain. Luna is 3. She has Vardenberg syndrome. Her brother Elias, his breath stopped, is 3 minutes older. He has the same eyes. Elias's voice was a whisper. "He's named after me?" Clara didn't nod, didn't shake her head. She just said, "He's named after the man I thought I'd lose." She turned, walked back inside, didn't invite him, didn't shut the door, just left it open, like a question, like a chance. Elias stood there, alone, on the cliff, with the wind screaming around him, and the sea below, and the door, open, and inside 2 children, with his eyes, and a woman who'd loved him enough to leave, and loved him enough to keep living. He took another step, then another, and then he crossed the threshold. The door clicked shut behind him, not locked, just closed, like a promise, like a prayer. Inside, the house smelled like bread and books, like laughter, like healing. Luna ran to the window, pointed. "Look, Mama, the sky is crying." Outside, the rain began, soft, slow, like tears falling from the clouds. Clara stood by the stove, stirring soup. She didn't turn, didn't ask him to sit, didn't ask him to leave. She just said, "I didn't name him after you because I wanted you to come back." She paused, stirred again. "I named him after you because I wanted him to know that even the man who broke me still had a heart." She turned, looked at him. For the first time in 5 years, her eyes didn't hold pain. They held something worse. Hope. "I don't want you to fix me. I don't want you to apologize. I don't even want you to stay." She stepped closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I just want you to know." She reached out, not to touch him, but to point to the drawing on the fridge. The one Luna had made. The one with the tall man. The heart. The word, "Please." "I didn't draw that." She looked at him. "I did." Elias stared. At the drawing. At her. At the children. At the life she'd built. Not with his money. Not with his name. Not with his approval. But with her courage. Her quiet. Her love. And he realized she hadn't left him. She'd left the man he'd been. And she'd stayed. For them. For the ones who needed to be seen. For the ones who never asked for anything. Just to be loved. The rain tapped the window. Like fingers. Like a heartbeat. Clara whispered, "You can stay tonight." She didn't say forever. She didn't say "I forgive you." She didn't say "I love you." She just said, "You can stay tonight." And for the first time in his life, Elias Whitmore didn't ask for more. He just sat down, at the table, with the soup, with the silence, with the children, and the woman, and let himself be held not by power, not by legacy, but by peace. And for the first time, he didn't feel empty. He felt found. Outside, the lighthouse light flickered. For the first time in 5 years, it turned on. Not by electricity, not by machine, but by moonlight, and the wind, and the sea, and the quiet miracle of a man who finally learned. So Luna sat cross-legged on the floor, drawing again. Not on paper, on the wooden table, with her tiny fingers, tracing lines in the condensation left by the bowl. Elias watched. He didn't know what she was drawing, but he knew the shape, the curve of a heart, the two figures, one tall, one small, and between them a third, smaller, holding hands. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. He already knew. She was drawing him, not as the man he'd been, but as the man he was becoming. Clara stood at the sink washing a spoon. She didn't look at him, didn't hurry, didn't pretend. She just washed. And the silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of everything they'd lost, everything they'd survived, everything they hadn't said. Then a sound, soft, tiny, a whimper, from the bedroom. Elias didn't move. Clara didn't turn, but her hands stopped. The spoon slipped, clinked against the porcelain. She didn't pick it up. She just stood there, breathing. Then another sound, a cry, not loud, not angry, a child's cry, the kind that doesn't scream. It aches. Clara moved, slowly, like walking through water. She opened the door. Elias didn't follow. He couldn't. Not yet. He just listened. Elias. Clara's voice, low, trembling. It's okay, my love. Mama's here. Pause. A sniffle. I'm scared. I know. I don't like the dark. I know. I dreamt he was gone again. Clara didn't answer right away. She just sat. Then, a whisper. So quiet Elias almost missed it. I know. I dreamt it too. Elias's breath caught. He didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Clara's voice came again. I dreamt he came back. Pause. And then he left again. Silence. The rain tapped the window, like fingers, like a heartbeat. Then Elias stood, slowly. His legs felt like glass. He walked to the doorway, didn't enter, just stood in the frame. Clara looked up. Her eyes were wet, not from tears, from exhaustion, from years, from love. Luna was still at the table, but Elias's son, his son, was curled into Clara's chest, eyes closed, face streaked with tears, one eye gray-blue, the other green, just like his, just like Elias's. And in the boy's tiny hand, a small folded piece of paper. Elias recognized it. It was the same one he'd kept in his coat, the one with the drawing, the one with the word, please. He didn't ask. He didn't reach for it. He just whispered, Did he ask for me? Clara didn't answer. She just looked at her son, then at Elias, and nodded, once, slowly, as if the weight of that nod had carried 5 years of silence. Luna, still drawing, looked up. Daddy, she said. Elias flinched. No one had called him that. Not since he was a boy. Not since his mother died. Daddy, she repeated. Are you going to stay? Clara didn't move, didn't speak, didn't look away. She just held her son and waited for him to answer. Elias stepped forward. One slow step, then another. He knelt, not in prayer, not in submission, in presence. He reached out, not to take the paper, not to touch the boy, but to brush the hair from his forehead. His fingers trembled. The boy didn't wake, but his lips moved, softly, like a prayer. Don't leave. Elias's throat closed. He swallowed, and when he spoke, his voice was raw, like stone worn down by the tide. I'm not going anywhere. The boy's eyelids fluttered. A tear slipped free. Elias caught it with his thumb. I'm here. The boy sighed, slept. Clara didn't smile, didn't cry. She just whispered, You didn't say. I'm sorry. Elias looked at her. No, she waited. He took a breath. I don't need to say it. She frowned. Why not? He looked at his son, then at her, then at the drawing on the table, then at the window, at the rain, at the sea. I already showed you. She didn't understand. Not yet. He stood, walked to the window, opened it. The wind rushed in, cold, salted, real. He didn't shut it. He just stood there, letting it in, letting it all in. Clara came to his side, didn't touch him, didn't speak, just stood beside him like she had the day they met at the library when he'd dropped his book, and she'd picked it up and smiled and said, "You look like you need a friend." He didn't look at her. He looked at the sea and said, "I spent my life building walls because I thought if I was strong enough, no one could hurt me." Pause. I didn't realize I was the one hurting. Clara didn't answer. She just reached out and placed her hand over his, on the windowsill, not to hold him, not to comfort him, just to be there. Her skin was warm. Her fingers were calloused. From work, from love, from life. And for the first time, Elias didn't feel like he had to fix anything. He just felt held. By the wind, by the rain, by the silence, by her. He turned, looked at her. For the first time in 5 years, he didn't see the woman he'd lost. He saw the woman who'd stayed, who'd raised 2 children with no money, no name, no help, who'd turned pain into purpose, who'd loved a man who didn't deserve her, and still didn't stop loving. He whispered, "What do you want from me?" She didn't hesitate. "I don't want anything." He blinked. "Not even an apology?" She looked at him, then at the children, then back at him. "I already forgave you." He didn't move, didn't breathe. "When?" She smiled. A small, quiet thing, the kind that comes after the storm. "Every morning." He stared. "Every morning?" She nodded. "When I wake up, and when I look at them?" She looked at her son, then at Luna, then back at him. "I see their eyes." She paused. "And I remember, you gave them that." She took his hand, gently, and placed it over her heart. "Forgiveness isn't something you give," she squeezed. "It's something you choose to let go of." He didn't cry, not then, but something inside him cracked. Not broken, becoming. He turned back to the window. The rain had slowed. The clouds parted. Just slightly, a sliver of moonlight fell across the floor and landed on the drawing, on the 3 figures, the tall man, the woman, the child, and between them a new one, a 4th, smaller, with wings. Elias didn't ask. He didn't need to. He knew. It was her, the girl, the one who'd been born in silence, the one who'd never been wanted, the one who'd been abandoned, and then loved, by a woman who refused to give up, by a man who finally learned how to kneel. He whispered, "What's her name?" Clara looked at him, then at the drawing, then at the moon, and said, "She doesn't have one yet." Elias turned, looked into her eyes, and for the first time he didn't see the woman he'd lost. He saw the woman who'd saved him. He whispered, "Will you let me choose?" She didn't answer. She just smiled and took his hand, led him to the crib where the boy slept, and whispered, "His name is Elias." She looked at him. "And if you want, we can give her one too." He didn't speak. He just reached down and touched the baby's cheek. So soft, so small, so alive. And he whispered not to the child, not to Clara, but to the universe, to the sea, to the stars, to the ghost of the man he used to be. "I'm here." And this time he meant it, not as a billionaire, not as a Whitmore, not as a man who had to be in control, but as a father, as a husband, as a man who had finally learned that love doesn't demand perfection. It just asks to be chosen, again, and again, and again. Outside, the moonlight stretched across the floor, like a path, like a promise, like a door wide open, waiting for him to walk through. and never leave. The next morning, Luna woke up and ran to the window. She pointed and screamed, "Mama, look!" Clara came. Elias followed. Outside, the lighthouse light was on, bright, golden, beating like a heart, and beneath it a small wooden sign, new, freshly painted. In bold, trembling letters, "Welcome home." Elias didn't write it. Clara didn't write it. Luna didn't write it. But they all knew who had. He didn't say anything. He just took Clara's hand and held it tight and whispered, "I'm not leaving." She didn't say, "I love you." She didn't say, "I forgive you." She just leaned her head against his shoulder and whispered back, "I know." And for the first time in 5 years, they both believed it. Not because of words, but because of silence, because of rain. And yet, there it was, a steady golden pulse, beating against the dark, like a heart refusing to quit. Elias stood at the window barefoot, still in the same clothes from last night. The wind had dried the salt on his skin. His hands still smelled like her, jasmine and seaweed and the faintest trace of lavender soap. Luna was asleep on the couch, curled around a stuffed seahorse she'd found in the attic. Elias had found it yesterday. It was old, one eye missing, its tail stitched with blue thread. Clara had made it, for the twins, before they were born. He hadn't asked. He hadn't needed to. He just knew. And now the lighthouse, the light, the silence. Something was coming. He could feel it, like the tide, like a storm you know is coming, but you can't see it yet. Clara came in from the kitchen. She held 2 mugs, one for him, one for herself. She didn't say anything, just set his down, on the windowsill, beside the drawing, the one with the 4 figures, the tall man, the woman, the boy, the girl, and now a 5th, tiny, with wings, and a halo. Elias looked at it, then at her. "You drew that." She didn't answer, just sipped her tea. "Who is she?" he asked. Clara didn't look at him. "She's the one who didn't make it." Elias froze. "What?" She set the mug down, turned to face him. Her voice was quiet, not broken, not angry, just heavy. "The first one." He didn't move, didn't breathe. "I didn't know." "You weren't supposed to." She walked to the window, stared out, at the sea, at the light, at the clinic. "Before I left, I was pregnant." Elias's throat closed. He didn't speak. He couldn't. She didn't turn, just kept staring. "I was 6 weeks. I didn't tell you, because I knew what you'd say." He whispered, "What?" She finally looked at him. Her eyes were dry, but her voice cracked like ice underfoot. "You'd say, it's not enough." He flinched, as if she'd slapped him. She didn't move, just kept going. "I felt it, every day. I could feel you pulling away, like you were already grieving." She turned, looked at him. "Do you remember the day you came home from Zurich?" He did. He remembered. He'd walked in, smiling, holding a folder. "I got the results," he'd said. "They say you're not fertile, but there's a new procedure in Geneva. We can try again. I'll pay for it. We'll get a surrogate." She had looked at him and said, "I'm not a machine." He'd laughed. "Clara, I'm not asking you to be one. I'm asking you to try." She'd nodded, quietly, then gone to the bathroom and cried until she couldn't breathe. And then she bled, just a little. In the morning, she'd thought it was stress. It wasn't. It was loss. And she'd buried it, with the baby, in a small wooden box, in the garden, behind the lighthouse. She hadn't told anyone, not even Daniel, not even her mother, because she didn't want to hear him say, "It was never meant to be." She didn't say any of that, not yet. She just whispered, "I carried her for 6 weeks. I loved her. I named her." He swallowed. "What was her name?" Clara looked at him. Her eyes were full, but she didn't cry. She never cried anymore. She just said, "Leora." Elias didn't move, didn't blink. Leora. The name floated in the air, like a prayer, like a ghost, like a star. He stepped forward. One slow step, then another. He reached out, not to touch her, not to hold her, just to take the mug. From the windowsill, his fingers brushed hers, and for the first time she didn't pull away. He looked at the drawing again, the fifth figure, with wings, with a halo, and beneath it a word, written in pencil, faint but clear. Remember. He looked at her. Did you draw that? She nodded. I did. He didn't ask why. He didn't ask how. He just whispered, I'm sorry. She didn't say it's okay. She didn't say, I forgive you. She just looked at him and said, You don't have to apologize to me. He frowned. Then who? She walked to the door, opened it. The wind rushed in, cold, real. She stepped outside, didn't look back, just whispered, Come with me. He followed, barefoot, through the grass, through the dew, to the edge of the cliff, where the lighthouse stood, and beneath it a small stone, flat, unmarked, just a stone. She knelt, placed her hand on it, then looked at him. Her name was Leora. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just said, She was yours. Elias's breath stopped. He fell to his knees, beside her, didn't touch the stone, didn't speak, just stared, at the dirt, at the wind, at the sea, at the light, at the woman beside him, who had carried his child, who had buried it, who had never told him, who had still loved him, even then, even when he didn't deserve it. He whispered, I didn't know. She didn't answer. He reached out, slowly, trembling, and placed his hand over hers, on the stone. I'm sorry. She didn't move, just whispered, She would have had your eyes. He closed his eyes, and for the first time he let himself cry. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, like the rain, like the tide, like a man who had spent his life building walls and finally let them fall. Clara didn't hug him, didn't kiss him, didn't say anything. She just sat there, with him, with the stone, with the ghost of a daughter they never got to hold. And the wind carried her voice, soft as a lullaby. She's still here. He looked up, at the lighthouse, at the light, beating, beating, beating. She's in the light, he whispered. Clara nodded. Yes. Then she turned, looked at him, and for the first time her eyes weren't full of grief. They were full of peace. She's not gone. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a small wooden charm, carved by hand, a bird, with wings, and a heart. She placed it in his palm. Leora's name is on the back. He turned it. There, tiny, inscribed in careful letters. Leora, beloved, remembered. He held it, tight, then looked at her. I want to build her a shrine. She didn't answer, just nodded. He stood, took her hand, and pulled her up. Then he turned, walked back to the house. Clara followed. Inside, he went to the attic, found the box, the one with the old books, the one with the drawings, the one with the seahorse. He opened it and took out a small wooden frame. He sat on the floor, and with his hands still trembling, he carved. Not with a chisel, not with a machine, but with his fingers, with his tears, with his love. He carved Leora Whitmore, born in silence, loved in eternity. He painted it with gold, with blue, with the color of her eyes. He hung it on the wall, right beside the drawing, the one with the 5 figures. And beneath it he wrote, We didn't lose her. We just didn't get to hold her yet. Clara stood in the doorway, watching. Her eyes were wet, but she didn't cry. She just whispered, She would have loved you. He turned, looked at her, and for the first time he didn't see the woman he'd lost. He saw the woman who'd saved them all. He walked to her, didn't kiss her, didn't hold her, just took her hand, and said, I'm not leaving. She smiled, just slightly, and whispered back, I know. Outside, the lighthouse light pulsed, stronger, brighter, as if it had been waiting for this, for them, for the child they'd never held. and the love they'd finally learned to give. The next morning, Luna woke up and ran to the attic. She climbed the stairs and saw the frame. She looked at it for a long time. Then she reached up and touched the carved bird and whispered, "Hello, Leora." And from outside, the wind blew, just once, gentle, warm, and the light in the lighthouse flickered, twice, like a heartbeat, like a kiss, like a voice from somewhere beyond, saying, "I'm here." And for the first time, Elias didn't feel alone. He felt seen, by the sea, by the sky, by the child he never held, and by the woman who had loved him, even when he didn't know how to love back. And he knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of everything. He turned to Clara and whispered, "Will you let me be her father?" She didn't answer. She just took his hand and led him to the window where the light was shining and said, "She's already chosen you." And then she kissed his cheek, just once, and whispered, "Welcome home, Papa." And for the first time, he believed it, not because he'd fixed anything, but because he'd finally stopped running and just stood with her, with them, with the light and the love that never died. It just waited for him to come back. And this time he was here, and he wasn't going anywhere. The lighthouse kept glowing. Every night, no one turned it on. No one fixed it. It just stayed, like a promise, like a prayer, like a mother's love. It burned, steady, golden, unshakable, as if it had been waiting for this moment since the day Clara walked away. Elias didn't sleep. He sat on the floor of the attic, back against the wall, the wooden frame of Leora resting in his lap. He traced the carved letters with his thumb. Leora Whitmore, born in silence, loved in eternity. The wood was still warm from the morning sun. He didn't cry, not yet, but his chest ached like a wound that had finally opened. Clara came in quietly. She didn't speak, didn't sit, just stood in the doorway watching him, watching them. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was sacred. She set down a plate, 2 eggs, toast, cup of tea. For him, she didn't ask if he was hungry. She knew. He looked up. "Why didn't you tell me?" She didn't flinch, didn't look away. "I told you I didn't want you to say, 'It's not enough.'" He swallowed. "I said that." She nodded. "I heard you." He closed his eyes. "I was wrong." She stepped forward, sat beside him, not too close, not too far, just there. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to feel guilty." He looked at her. "I am guilty." She didn't say no. She didn't say yes. She just whispered, "Guilt doesn't bring her back." He looked down at the frame. "I know." "Then what do you want?" He didn't answer right away. He looked at the window, at the light, at the sea. "I want to be her father." Clara turned to him. Her voice was quiet. "But you never met her." "I never met Daniel when I first held him either." She blinked. "What?" He looked at her. "I didn't hold him until he was 3 days old." She frowned. "You're lying." "I'm not." He took a breath. "The night he was born, I was in Zurich, finalizing the contract for the new lab. I didn't come home until the 3rd day. When I walked in, he was already asleep, and I just stood there, and I thought, I didn't do anything to make this happen." He looked at her. "I thought I was just the man who paid for it." Clara's eyes filled. She didn't cry. She just whispered, "You didn't know how to love him then." He nodded. "And I didn't know how to love Leora." He placed the frame on his lap. "Now I do." Clara looked at him, really looked. For the first time in 5 years, she saw him, not the billionaire, not the father, not the man who broke her, just Elias, broken, trying, willing, and she reached out, not to touch him, but to touch the frame. Her fingers hovered over Leora's name. Then, she pressed her palm against it, and whispered, "Say her name." He looked at her. "Leora." She nodded. Again. He swallowed. "Leora." Louder. His voice cracked. "Leora." She smiled. a small, trembling thing. Again, he closed his eyes and shouted into the attic, into the wind, into the sky. Leora! Silence. Then a sound. From outside. Soft, faint, like a bell, like a chime, like a child's laugh. Elias froze. Clara didn't move, just listened. The wind blew, through the open window, through the cracks in the wood. And then a single note. High, clear, sweet, like a song, like a voice. Not from the sea, not from the wind, from her. Elias turned to Clara, his eyes wide. Did you? She shook her head. No, he stood, walked to the window, looked out. The lighthouse light pulsed. Once, twice, 3 times. Then a single soft click, like a door opening. From inside the lighthouse. He didn't move, didn't breathe. Clara came to his side, whispered, "She's here." He turned to her. "Are you sure?" She didn't answer. She just took his hand, led him down the stairs, out the door, past the garden, to the stone, to the spot where Leora was buried. The ground was soft. The grass was green. The wind had carried petals from the wildflowers nearby. They lay in a circle, around the stone, as if someone had placed them there. Elias knelt. He didn't pray. He didn't speak. He just placed his palm on the earth and whispered, "I'm sorry I didn't hold you." Then he closed his eyes and said, "I love you." Silence. Then a whisper, not from the wind, not from the sea, from inside him, as if the earth had spoken through his bones. "I know." He jerked back, looked at Clara. Her eyes were closed. Her face was calm. She whispered, "You heard it too." He didn't answer. He just fell forward, pressed his forehead to the ground, and sobbed. Not loud, not dramatic, just deep, like a man who had been holding his breath for 5 years. And finally let it out. Clara knelt beside him, didn't touch him, didn't try to comfort him, just whispered, "She's not gone." He didn't look up. "I know. She's here. I know. She's in the light." He nodded. "I know." She took his hand, squeezed. "Say it." He looked at her, tears streaming. "I know." She smiled. "Say her name." He swallowed, looked at the stone, looked at the sky, and said, with every part of his soul, "Leora." The wind rose. The lighthouse light flared, brighter than ever. And then a sound, from the cliffside, a child's voice, tiny, clear, singing, a lullaby, not in English, not in Portuguese, in a language Elias didn't know, but Clara did. She closed her eyes and whispered, "That's the song my mother sang to me when I was afraid of the dark." Elias looked at her. "What is it?" She smiled through tears. "It means, I am with you." The singing stopped. The wind stilled. The light dimmed, just slightly, but it didn't go out. It never would. Clara stood, took his hand, and pulled him up. "Come." He didn't ask where. He just followed. Back to the house, back to the attic, back to the frame, back to the drawing. The 5 figures, the bird, the halo, and now a new one, a 6th, smaller, with wings, and a crown, drawn in crayon, by Luna. She had drawn it last night, while Elias sat in the attic, while Clara stood by the stone, while the wind sang, and she had written beneath it, "Leora is a star now." Elias stared. He didn't speak. He just touched the drawing, and whispered, "She's not gone." Clara nodded. "No, she's here. She is." He looked at her, and for the first time he didn't see the woman he'd lost. He saw the woman who had turned grief into grace, who had turned silence into song, who had turned a broken heart into a home. He reached out, not to hold her, but to take the drawing, and he pinned it to the wall, beside Leora's frame, and beneath it he wrote, "We didn't lose her. We just learned how to see her." That night the children slept. Clara sat by the window. Elias sat beside her. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The lighthouse light pulsed. Once, twice, 3 times. And then a voice from the sea, soft, faint, a child's voice, singing, "I am with you." Clara looked at Elias. He looked back, and for the first time he didn't feel afraid. He felt known. He whispered, "She's real." Clara nodded. "She always was." He looked at the light, then at the sea, then at the stars, and said, "I'm going to build her a garden." Clara didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, "I know." And then she whispered something else, something he'd never heard before, something she'd never said to anyone, not even Daniel, not even herself, until now. "I'm not alone anymore." He turned, looked at her, and whispered back, "Neither am I." Outside, the wind carried the scent of jasmine, and the lighthouse light still burning, still beating, still singing, "I am with you." And for the first time, Elias Whitmore didn't need to be powerful. He didn't need to be rich. He didn't need to be feared. He just needed to be loved, and to love, and to remember that some hearts don't need to be held to be real. They just need to be remembered. And that's what he would do every day for the rest of his life. He would remember her in the wind, in the light, in the laughter of the children, in the silence between him and Clara, in the way the sea still whispered her name when no one else was listening. And he knew she wasn't gone. She was just waiting for him to be brave enough to love again. And this time he was here, and he wasn't going anywhere. The next morning, Luna woke up and ran to the window. She pointed and screamed, "Mama, look!" Clara came. Elias followed. Outside, the lighthouse light was glowing, brighter than ever, and beneath it a single flower, white, with golden petals, growing from the stone. No one had planted it. No one had watered it. It was there, just blooming, as if the earth itself had whispered, "I remember her too." Elias knelt, touched the petal. It was warm. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you." And from the sea the wind sang, just once, soft, sweet, and clear, "I am with you." And for the first time, Elias Whitmore didn't feel like a man who had lost everything. He felt like a man who had finally found everything. And it wasn't in money, or power, or legacy. It was in silence, in memory, in love, in a light that never went out, and a child who never left. She was here, and she would always be, because some love doesn't need a body. It just needs a heart that remembers, delicate, golden, as if the earth itself had learned to bloom in her name. Elias sat on the cliffside, barefoot, knees drawn to his chest, staring at it. He hadn't slept. He didn't need to. Something inside him had finally stopped running. Clara came out with 2 mugs of tea, honey, and chamomile, just how he liked it. She didn't say a word, just sat beside him, let the silence settle between them like dust on sunlight. The wind carried the salt. The gulls cried overhead. And then a voice, small, clear, from inside the house. "Mama!" Luna stood in the doorway, wearing her nightgown, hair wild, eyes wide. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She just stood there and whispered, "Leora's flower. It's singing." Clara didn't move. Elias didn't turn. They just listened, and then they heard it. Not a sound, not a melody, but a feeling, a vibration, like a hum, low, warm, rising from the ground, from the flower, from the stone, from her. Luna took a step forward, then another. She walked to the stone, kneeled, put her hand on the petals, closed her eyes, and whispered, "Are you okay?" Silence. Then the wind stirred, and the flower trembled, not from the breeze, from something else, something deeper, something alive. And then a voice, not from the air, not from the sea, from inside Luna, soft, clear, like a memory she didn't know she had. "I'm not cold anymore." Elias froze. Clara's breath caught. Luna didn't open her eyes. She just smiled. "She's not sad." She leaned forward, pressed her cheek to the stone. I think she's happy. Elias stood, slowly, like he was afraid the ground would vanish. He walked to her, didn't kneel, didn't touch, just stood above her, and whispered, "Leora, is she talking to you?" Luna opened her eyes, looked up at him, not with fear, not with wonder, with certainty. "She's not talking," she smiled. "She's remembering." Elias's chest cracked. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just looked at the flower, at the stone, at his daughter, and whispered, "Do you remember her?" Luna nodded. "I remember her eyes." She reached into her pocket, pulled out a small drawing, drawn in crayon, a girl, with wings, with one blue eye, one green, and a crown of stars. Beneath it, Leora, my sister, my light. Elias's hands shook. He didn't ask how. He didn't ask why. He just sat beside her and whispered, "Tell me about her." Luna didn't hesitate. "She sings when the wind blows. She smells like jasmine. She holds my hand when I'm scared. She tells me not to be afraid of the dark." She looked at Elias. "Do you know why?" He shook his head. "Because," she said, voice quiet as a lullaby, "she was never in the dark." Elias looked at Clara. Clara looked at him. Neither spoke, but they both knew. Leora hadn't been taken. She had been transformed. And now she was speaking. Through the wind, through the flower, through their daughter. Elias reached out, touched the drawing, then the stone, then Luna's hand, and whispered, "I wish I could have held you." Luna turned, looked at him, and said, "You did." He blinked. "What?" She nodded. "When you cried last night. When you said, 'I'm sorry.' When you called her name." Her small fingers curled around his. "You held her then." Elias's breath stopped. He looked at Clara. She was crying, quietly, just one tear, slipping down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. She just whispered, "She's not gone." Elias looked back at Luna, and for the first time he didn't see a child. He saw a bridge between the world of the living and the world of the loved. He whispered, "Do you think she knows I'm here?" Luna nodded. "She knows you're trying." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "And she's proud of you." Elias closed his eyes, and for the first time in 5 years, he didn't feel broken. He felt seen, by his daughter, by his wife, by the ghost of a daughter he never held. He didn't ask for proof. He didn't need it. He just sat there, with her, with them, with the flower, with the wind, and the light that never went out. That afternoon, Elias walked into the village. He didn't go to the bank, didn't call his lawyer, didn't check his phone. He went to the old chapel, the one with the crooked steeple and the stained glass window of a woman holding a child. The priest was there, an old man, with silver hair, and eyes that had seen too much grief. Elias didn't introduce himself, didn't ask for blessings. He just stood in the doorway and said, "I need to bury something." The priest looked up. "Is it a person?" Elias shook his head. "No, then what?" Elias took a breath. "I need to bury my shame." The priest didn't blink. He just nodded. "Come." They walked to the back, to the garden, where the names of the dead were carved into stone. Elias knelt. He pulled from his coat a small wooden box. Inside, a single pearl button, the one Clara had lost on the night she left, the one he'd kept for 5 years. He opened the box, held it in his palm, and whispered, "I used to think love was something you owned." He placed the button in the earth. "I thought if I had enough money, enough power, enough control, I could make people stay." He closed his eyes. "I was wrong." He dug, with his hands, not with a shovel, not with tools, just his fingers. He buried the button, beneath the soil, beside the stone of a woman who'd lost her child, who'd lost her husband, who'd lost everything, and still had kept loving. Elias stood, dirt under his nails, tears on his cheeks. The priest didn't speak, just placed a hand on his shoulder, and said, Some things aren't meant to be kept. They're meant to be returned. Elias nodded. Thank you. He turned to leave, then stopped, looked back. Do you believe in spirits? The priest smiled. I believe in love. He paused. And love never dies. It just changes shape. Elias walked back to the lighthouse. The wind was different now. Warmer, lighter, as if the sea had forgiven him. Clara was on the porch, sitting with Elias, his son. The boy was asleep in her arms, his face peaceful, one eye gray, one eye green, just like his father's. Luna ran to him, held up her drawing. Look, it was new, a new one, the same girl, with wings. But now she was holding hands with two children, Luna, Elias, and a third, smaller, with a crown and a halo beneath it. We are family. Elias didn't speak. He just took the drawing and pinned it to the wall, beside the others, beside Leora, beside the flower, beside the light. Clara looked at him and whispered, "She's not gone." He looked at her, then at the children, then at the sea, and said, "No." He took her hand, squeezed it, and whispered back, "She's just finally home." That night, the lighthouse light pulsed. Once, twice, 3 times, and then a new sound. Not a whisper, not a hum, a song. Clear, sweet, familiar. It was the lullaby, the one Clara's mother had sung, the one Leora had sung through Luna. But now it wasn't just one voice. It was 3, Luna's, Elias's, and Clara's, together, soft, harmonized, as if the wind had joined in, as if the stars had leaned down to listen, as if she had joined them. Elias held his son, Clara held Luna, and they sang, not to the dead, not to the sky, to each other, to the love that had survived, to the love that had been broken, and then mended, by silence, by tears, by a flower, by a child, by a father who finally learned that some hearts don't need to be held. They just need to be remembered. And that is the most powerful kind of love. The kind that doesn't die. It just becomes light. And then it sings. And when it sings, you don't need to see it. You just need to listen and believe. The next morning, Luna woke up and ran to the window. She pointed and screamed, "Mama, look!" Clara came. Elias followed. Outside, the flower on Leora's stone had grown. Now 5 petals, each one glowing faintly in the dawn light, and beneath it, a new word, written in dew, on the stone, as if written by invisible fingers. "Thank you." Elias didn't speak. He didn't cry. He just knelt and pressed his forehead to the earth and whispered, "I love you." And from the sea the wind sang back, not in words, but in feeling, in warmth, in peace, in belonging. And for the first time, Elias Whitmore didn't feel like a man who had lost everything. He felt like a man who had finally found everything. And it wasn't in money, or legacy, or power. It was in the quiet, in the light, in the song, in the flower, in the child who remembered, and in the woman who never stopped loving him, even when he didn't know how to love himself. And he knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new kind of family, not built on blood, but on belief, not on wealth, but on wonder, not on control, but on surrender. And he would spend the rest of his life learning how to love, just as she had, just as they all had. And every night, when the lighthouse glowed, he would whisper, "I'm here." And somewhere in the wind, in the stars, in the petals of a flower, she would whisper back, "I know." And that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. The next morning, the flower bloomed again, 6 petals, and this time beneath it, a new word, written in dew, not by wind, not by magic, but by a child's hand. Luna had drawn it, with a stick, in the dirt, just outside the door. "We are all still here." And Elias, he didn't need to see her. He didn't need to hear her. He just needed to know. She was, and that was all he needed. To live, to love, to be whole. The lighthouse light never went out, and neither did she, because some love doesn't need a body. It just needs a heart that remembers, and that was all she ever asked for. And now he gave it, every day, without asking, without waiting, just loving. And that was how she came back, not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as a presence, as a light, as a song, as a sister, as a daughter, as a miracle written in petals, and whispered in the wind, and held in the quiet, in the love, in the silence between a father and his child, and a wife who never stopped believing in him, in them, in love, even when he didn't. Even then, she believed, and that was the miracle. That was the home. That was her. And he would spend the rest of his life learning how to be worthy of her. Not because he had to, but because he finally wanted to. A low, warm hum, like a mother rocking a child to sleep. Elias woke before dawn, not because he heard an alarm, not because he was afraid, but because he felt her, Leora, not as a memory, not as a ghost, but as a presence, like the warmth of sunlight on skin, like the scent of jasmine after rain. He sat up, looked at the window. The lighthouse light pulsed, once, twice, 3 times, and then a new rhythm. 5 beats, pause, 3 beats, pause, 5, 3, 5, 3, like a heartbeat, like a pulse, like a message. He didn't know what it meant, but his chest ached, as if his soul had recognized it. Clara stirred beside him. She hadn't slept either. She opened her eyes, looked at him. Did you hear it? He nodded. 5, then 3. She sat up, wrapped her arms around her knees. Leora's favorite number was 5. He blinked. She never told me that. She didn't have to. She looked at the window. The night she was born. The nurses counted her heartbeats. 5 strong, then 3 slow, then 5 again. They said it was irregular. But the midwife, she smiled. She turned to him. She said, "That's not a defect. That's a song." Elias's breath caught. What did she mean? Clara didn't answer right away. She reached for the drawing on the wall. The one Luna had made. The one with the 5 figures. The one with the wings. The halo. And now a new detail. A tiny circle. Above the girl's head. With 5 dots inside. And beneath it, her song. Clara traced the dots with her finger. She sang it every night. Before she went to sleep, she'd hum it. She'd tap it on my chest. She looked at Elias. 5-3, 5-3. He whispered. She was trying to tell us something. Clara nodded. I think she still is. They got up, didn't speak, didn't dress, just walked barefoot to the cliff, to the stone, to the flower. The petals had grown, 6 now, each one glowing faintly in the moonlight, and beneath them a new word, written in dew, not by wind, not by magic, by her. Listen. Elias knelt, pressed his ear to the ground. Clara knelt beside him. They didn't speak. They didn't move. They just listened. And then it came, not from the sea, not from the wind, from below, from the earth. A rhythm. 5 taps. Pause. 3 taps. Pause. 5, 3, 5, 3. Like a heartbeat, like a lullaby, like a voice. Elias closed his eyes. Tears slipped down his cheeks. He didn't wipe them. He just listened. And then he tapped, with his finger, on the stone. 5 times. Pause. 3 times. Pause. 5, 3. The earth answered. Faster. Stronger. The flower trembled. The petals glowed. And then a voice. Not loud. Not clear. But there. A whisper. Like a breath. Like a sigh. Like a child's laughter caught in the wind. I'm here. Elias gasped. Clara didn't move. She just whispered, "Say it back." He didn't hesitate. He pressed his palm to the stone and tapped. 5. Pause. 3. Pause. 5. 3. And then the earth sang back. Loud. Clear. Strong. 5. 3. 5. 3. 5. 3. 5. 3. And then a new sound, a third rhythm, slow, gentle, 2 taps, then a pause, then 1, tap, tap, pause, tap. Elias froze. Clara's breath stopped. They looked at each other. Elias whispered, That's the pattern of the twins' heartbeat." Clara's eyes filled. They were born premature. They had a weak rhythm. The doctors said, "Too strong," then 1 slow. She looked at the stone. They called it a dual pulse. She turned to him. Leora, she knew. Elias didn't speak. He just tapped. Again. 5, 3. Then he added his own. 2, 1. Together. 5, 3, 2, 1. The earth answered. Faster. Brighter. The flower glowed like a lantern. And then a voice. Not from the wind. Not from the sea. From inside Elias. As if his own bones had learned to speak. "I am with you," he cried. Not in sobs. In silence. In surrender. In recognition. Clara took his hand. And whispered, "She's not gone." He nodded. "I know. She's not a memory." He nodded again. "I know. She's a rhythm." He looked at her. "A heartbeat." She smiled. "A song." He turned back to the stone and whispered, not to the dead, not to the sky, to her. "My daughter." He tapped. 5, 3, 2, 1. And the earth answered, not with sound, but with warmth. A pulse, right beneath his palm. Strong, alive, real. He closed his eyes and whispered, "I'm here." The ground trembled, just once, and then the flower bloomed, a 7th petal, golden, shimmering, as if lit from within, and beneath it, a new word, written in dew, not by hand, not by wind, by love, always. Elias didn't speak. He just pressed his forehead to the stone and wept, not for loss, not for guilt, for gratitude, for connection, for a daughter who had never left, who had never been lost, who had simply changed form, and now she was speaking, through the earth, through the flower, through the rhythm of her own heartbeat, through the hands of her father, who had finally learned to listen. Clara stood, walked to the house, came back with 2 things, a small wooden drum and a cup of tea. She placed the drum beside him, and the tea. Then she sat and whispered, "Sing with her." He looked at her. "How?" She smiled. "Just tap." He picked up the drum, held it in his lap, closed his eyes, and began. 5 taps. Pause. 3 taps. Pause. 5, 3. The drum echoed. The wind joined. The seaside. And then Luna appeared. In her nightgown. Hair wild. Eyes bright. She didn't speak. She just knelt beside him, took his hand, and tapped. 2, 1. Together. 5, 3, 2, 1. And then Elias's son, Elias, woke, stood in the doorway, tired, sleepy, but awake. He didn't say a word, just walked to them, kneeled, and placed his small hand on the drum, and tapped. 1, 2, 3, 5. Not in order, not in rhythm, just with love. And then the flower, the 7th petal, it lifted, just slightly, as if breathing, and from its center a single golden spark rose, hovered, then drifted up into the sky and vanished like a star. Elias didn't reach for it. He didn't cry out. He just whispered, "She's going home." Clara nodded. "She always was." Luna looked up. "Is she okay?" Elias looked at her. "Yes." "Will she come back?" He smiled, a real smile, the first one in 5 years. "She already did." He looked at the drum, at the flower, at the sky, at his children, Clara, and whispered, "She's in all of us." Clara took his hand, squeezed, and said, "Then let's keep singing." And so they did. Every morning, before sunrise, they gathered, on the cliff, with the drum, with the stone, with the flower, and they tapped. 5, 3, 2, 1. And the earth answered, every time, stronger, brighter, warmer, and the flower grew, 8th petal, 9th, 10th, each one glowing, each one humming, each one a note in her song. And every night, when the lighthouse pulsed, the children would whisper, "Good night, Leora," and the wind would reply soft, sweet, clear, "Good night, my love." One morning, Elias didn't tap. He just sat, quiet, watching. The flower had 10 petals now, each one a different shade: gold, silver, crimson, blue, green, and one white, like snow, like a miracle. He reached out, touched it, and whispered, "Thank you." The petal trembled, then it fell, not from the wind, not from gravity, but as if it had chosen to let go. It floated down, landed in his palm, warm, alive, still glowing. He looked at Clara. She didn't speak. She just nodded. He held it to his chest and whispered, "I'll never let you go." She smiled. "I know." He looked at the children. Luna was drawing again, on the stone, with her finger, in the dirt. "Leora, my sister, my light, my heartbeat." Elias's son, Elias, was asleep on the grass, his hand resting on the drum, his lips moving, softly, as if singing. Elias leaned down, listened, and heard it, the same rhythm. 5, 3, 2, 1. His son was humming it. In his sleep, Elias closed his eyes, and for the first time he didn't feel like a man who had lost a child. He felt like a man who had been given back, not one daughter but 3, Leora, Luna, and the boy, who now carried her song in his breath. He looked at Clara and whispered, "I think she's teaching us how to live." She nodded. She always was. He took her hand, and together they stood, watching the sunrise. The lighthouse light still pulsed. 5, 3, 2, 1. And beneath it, the flower, still glowing, still singing, still alive. Not because it was magic, not because it was divine, but because love doesn't die. It just finds a new way to be. And now it lived, in the drum, in the earth, in the children's breath, in the quiet, in the silence, in the rhythm of a father's heart, finally beating in time with his daughters. And he knew this wasn't grief. This was grace. This wasn't loss. This was legacy, not of money, not of power, but of presence, of love, of a song that never stopped. And he would carry it, every day, for the rest of his life, not as a man who had lost, but as a man who had been found, by a daughter, who had never left, who had never stopped loving him, even when he didn't know how to love himself. And now he did, and she was still here, in the wind, in the light, in the beat, in the silence, in the space between his breaths. And he whispered, not to the sky, not to the sea, to her, to his daughter, to his heart, "I'm here." And somewhere in the golden petals, in the morning light, in the quiet hum of the earth, she whispered back, "I know." And that was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. The next morning, the 10th petal was gone, but in its place a new flower, growing from the stone, small, delicate, white, with 5 petals, and in the center a single golden dot, just like the spark, just like her. Elias knelt, touched it, and whispered, "Hello, little one." And the wind sang, just once, sweet, clear, and full of love, "I'm still here." And he smiled, because he knew she always would be, and he would never stop listening, because some love doesn't need to be seen, it just needs to be heard. And he had finally learned how, and that was the miracle, that was the home, that was her. And he would spend the rest of his life learning how to love, just as she had, just as they all had. And every night when the lighthouse pulsed, he would tap, 5, 3, 2, 1, and the earth would answer, and she would whisper, "I'm here," and he would whisper back, "I know." And that was their song. He didn't need to, because now it didn't belong to him. It belonged to her. The new flower, white, 5-petaled, glowing faintly at its center, had bloomed overnight. No rain, no sun, no soil, just the stone, just the memory, just the love. And it was beautiful, not because it was rare, but because it was real. Luna was the first to see it. She came running barefoot from the house, her nightgown fluttering like a ghost's wing. "Mama, look!" Clara followed. Elias didn't move. He just watched. Luna knelt, didn't touch, didn't scream, didn't cry. She just stared and whispered, "She's not gone." Clara sat beside her. "No, she's changing." Luna nodded. "She's becoming the flower." Clara looked at Elias. He didn't answer. He just reached into his pocket, pulled out the 7th petal, the one that had floated away, the one he'd kept pressed between the pages of The Little Prince. He placed it gently on the stone, beside the new flower, and whispered, "I gave you my heart." The wind stirred, not a breeze, not a gust, a breath, like a sigh, like a kiss, and the flower, the new one, trembled. Then it opened, just slightly, and from its center a single golden thread, unspooled, slow, silk-thin, glowing. It didn't rise, it didn't float, it moved, as if pulled by something invisible, curled around the old petal, wove through it. Then it touched the drum, and the drum hummed, not a sound, a vibration, a pulse. 5, 3, 2, 1. And then the thread stretched toward the sky, not to disappear, to connect. It reached the lighthouse, and the light, the eternal light, flared. Not brighter, not louder, but deeper, as if the tower had opened its chest and let the light pour out, not as a beacon, but as a heartbeat. Elias stood, walked to the lighthouse, didn't climb, didn't touch, just stood beneath it, and whispered, "Is this you?" The wind answered, not in words, in memory. He saw it, not with his eyes, with his soul. A child, small, with golden hair, with one blue eye, one green, sitting on the edge of the cliff, not afraid, not sad, just singing. Her voice wasn't loud. It was inside, like a song only the heart can hear. And she was holding something, a tiny drum, just like the one on the stone. And she was tapping. 5, 3, 2, 1. And then she looked up at him and smiled. Not a child's smile, not a ghost smile, a mother's smile. And she whispered, not to him, to the wind, to the sea, to the stars, "I'm not gone. I'm still singing." Elias fell to his knees, not from grief, from awe, from recognition. He looked back at the flower, at the thread, at the drum, Clara, at Luna, at his son, and whispered, "She's not dead." Clara came beside him, didn't touch him, just whispered, "She's not gone." He looked at her. "I think she's becoming the light." Clara nodded. "She always was." Luna ran to the drum, kneeled, placed her small hands on it, and tapped. 5, 3, 2, 1. The thread pulsed, the flower glowed, the lighthouse light flared again, and then a voice, not from the sky, not from the earth, from inside the drum, from inside the flower, from inside them, a child's voice, clear, sweet, unafraid. "Daddy, can you hear me?" Elias froze. He didn't answer. He couldn't. He just nodded. Tears poured down his face. He didn't wipe them. He didn't speak. He just whispered, "Yes, I'm not in the dark anymore." He swallowed. "No, you held me when you cried." He closed his eyes. "I did. You said my name." He nodded. "I did. Then I came home." He looked up, to the lighthouse, to the light, to the thread, to the flower, and whispered, "You never left. I never will." Silence. Then the thread curled around Luna's wrist, gently, like a bracelet, and then it vanished. Not gone, just inside. Luna looked at her wrist. No mark, no scar, just warmth. She looked up, smiled. "She's with me now." Elias stood, walked to his son. The boy was awake, staring at the flower. Elias knelt, looked into his eyes. Gray, green, just like hers. He whispered, "Do you hear her?" The boy didn't answer with words. He just tapped on his own chest. 5, 3, 2, 1. And then he looked at Elias and smiled, just like the flower, just like the light, just like her. Elias pulled him close, held him, not as a son, not as an heir, as a miracle, as a bridge, as a living echo. Clara came to them, wrapped her arms around both of them, and whispered, "She's not a memory." She kissed Elias's cheek. "She's a rhythm." She kissed the boy's forehead. "She's a heartbeat." She kissed Luna's hair. "She's a song." And then she looked at the flower and whispered, "She's our daughter." Elias didn't speak. He just pressed his forehead to his son's and whispered, "I'm sorry I didn't know how to love you before." The boy didn't answer. He just wrapped his arms around Elias's neck and held on tight. And then he whispered, "I'm not scared anymore." Elias closed his eyes, and for the first time he didn't feel like a man who had failed. He felt like a man who had been forgiven by his children, by his wife, by his daughter, and by himself. That afternoon, Elias walked into the village, not to the bank, not to the lawyer, not to the past. He walked to the school, the little one, with the peeling paint, the crooked bell, the children playing in the dirt. He didn't announce himself. He just stood at the door, watched. A teacher was reading to a group of children. A girl, about 6, with one blue eye, one green, Vardenberg syndrome, just like the twins, just like Leora. The teacher was reading, "The most important things are invisible to the eye." The girl raised her hand. "Why?" The teacher smiled. "Because love doesn't have a shape." The girl nodded. Then, "Why can I see it?" The room fell silent. Elias stepped inside. All eyes turned to him. He didn't speak. He just walked to the girl, kneeled, looked into her eyes. Blue, green, just like hers. He reached into his coat, pulled out the wooden drum, the one they'd been tapping on. He placed it gently on her desk and whispered, "This is for you." She looked at it, then at him. "Why?" He smiled. "Because you see what others don't." She reached out, touched it, and the drum hummed, just once. 5, 3, 2, 1. The whole class gasped. The teacher stepped forward, tears in her eyes. What is this?" Elias looked at the girl, then at the children, then at the window, where the lighthouse light pulsed, in perfect rhythm. And he said, "It's a song." He turned to leave, but the girl called out, Are you her father?" He stopped, didn't turn, just whispered, "I'm trying to be." She smiled. "Then you already are." He walked out, didn't look back, but as he crossed the street, the wind lifted his coat. And for the first time, he didn't feel like Elias Whitmore. Billionaire, cold, powerful. He felt like a father, a man who had finally learned how to listen. And when he got home, the flower was gone. The drum was gone. The thread was gone. But the stone was warm. And beneath it, a new word, written in moss, not carved, not painted, grown. "I am." Clara stood beside him. She didn't say anything, just took his hand, led him to the garden, to the spot where Leora was buried, to the spot where the flower had grown. And now there was a tree, small, delicate, white blossoms, each one shaped like a heart, and beneath it a single branch, bent, as if someone had tied a ribbon. He walked to it, touched it, and beneath the bark a carving, tiny, faint, but clear. "I am." He looked at Clara. She nodded. "She's not gone." He whispered, "She's not here." She smiled. "No, she's everywhere." He looked up, to the sky, to the sea, to the lighthouse, to the children playing in the yard, to the wind, to the silence, to the rhythm, and he whispered, "I hear you." And from the branches a blossom fell, landed in his palm, warm, alive, still glowing. And he knew she wasn't a memory. She wasn't a ghost. She wasn't even a spirit. She was love made visible, and he would spend the rest of his life learning how to be worthy of her. Not by building empires, not by winning, not by controlling, but by listening, by holding, by loving, by tapping. 5, 3, 2, 1, and never letting go, because some love doesn't need a body, it just needs a heart that remembers, and that was all she ever asked for. And now he gave it, every day, without asking, without waiting, just loving. And that was how she came back, not as a child, not as a ghost, but as a presence, as a rhythm, as a song, as a flower, as a tree, as a whisper, as a heartbeat. And he would never stop listening, because she was still here, and she always would be. And he would never stop saying, "I'm here," and she would always whisper back, "I am." And that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. That night, the children slept. Clara sat by the window. Elias sat beside her. The lighthouse pulsed. 5, 3, 2, 1. And from the garden, the tree whispered, just once, soft, sweet, clear, "I am." And Elias closed his eyes. And for the first time, he didn't feel alone. He didn't feel broken. He didn't feel guilty. He felt whole, because he had been found. Not by money, not by power, not by legacy, but by love. And it had been waiting, all along, just beneath the soil, just beneath the silence, just beneath the rhythm. And now it was home, and he was finally there, and he would never leave, because she was here. Not because he heard anything, but because he felt it. The air was different, lighter, warmer, like the moment before a child's first laugh. He walked barefoot to the garden. The tree stood tall now, not massive, not grand, but alive. Its branches reached like arms. Its blossoms, white, heart-shaped, glowed faintly in the moonlight. And beneath it, a new sound. Not a hum, not a whisper, a voice. Soft, clear, childlike, not speaking in words, in feelings. Elias didn't move. He just stood and listened. And then the voice came again, not from the tree, from inside him, like a memory he didn't know he had. "Daddy, you used to sing to me." He froze. He hadn't sung. Not in 5 years. Not since Clara left. Not since he stopped believing in miracles. He whispered, I didn't sing to you." The breeze stirred. The blossoms trembled. And the voice came again, gentler now. "You sang when you thought I was asleep." Elias's breath caught. He remembered. The night before the first test. The night he thought she'd never know. He'd sat in her room while she slept. He'd hummed a tune, his mother's lullaby. He'd never told anyone. He'd thought it was too private, too weak, too human. He'd thought she'd never hear it, but she had. She'd heard it. Every night, he closed his eyes. Tears spilled. "I didn't know you heard me." The tree rustled. One blossom fell, landed in his palm, warm, alive. And the voice this time came from outside, from the air, from the earth, from everywhere. "I heard you every night." He dropped to his knees. Not